All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Pesachim, Daf, Tzadik, Dalid. Before we recap, intro today's Daf, going back to what we learned yesterday, the machlokes between Rabbi and Abnasan regarding Pesach Sheni, whether it's a regel b'fnei atzmai, as holds Rabbi, whether it is a tashlumen l'rishoin, shitas Rab Nasan, shitas Rab Hananya ben Akavia, just to point out that the Rebbe in Lekutei Sichos Chelik Yud Ches on page 126, in the context of Pesach Sheni is the theme as Sinishdak and Farfalin. So the Rebbe explains how Sinishdak and Farfalin not only obviously fits with the concept of Pesach Sheni being a Tashlumen L'Rishain, but even actually it's even a greater theme based on Rebbe's Regel B'fnei Atzmai, and Bachlal learning the Sikh over there. In the beginning, we're learning Gemara Rashi, the way we have Rashi over here, but in the beginning there's going to be a tremendous clarification in the actual Pshat in the Gemara, the way it's basically La'asukei Shmaitza, Alibel de Hilchasa. And it's always good to remember that when we are learning here Gemara, we're learning Gemara Rashi, and there are many other ways of understanding the Gemara, and many times there are many other ways that latter Achreinim understood in Rashi, v'chulei, and look in the Sikha to better appreciate the Sugya. Okay, today, our daf primarily is going to focus on themes that are really part of the soid, of the secret of the Torah. Generally, the way we established the new moon, Kiddush HaChodesh, was purposefully not recorded in the oral Torah, meaning not in Mishnayos and not in Braisos and not in the Gemara. One of the reasons I heard is because they never wanted for there to be the possibility of us creating two calendars. So the way that we establish the new moon and the cheshbonos that God Almighty taught Moshe Rabbeinu and was passed down initially through the Bnei Yisachar v'chulei, it was kept a soid to'i, but it was kept a secret. Number one. Number two, just appreciating the following concept. The Rebbe points out that based on the din, that if a Beis Din establishes Rosh Chodesh, even when they know that they established it not on the date when the new moon really appeared, not on the Moiled, not only if they did so b'shoigeg, even if they did it knowingly, once they establish Rosh Chodesh, that day becomes consecrated. So the Rebbe asks, Pashut, that if the mitzias, if the reality is that the new moon will be visible on a Wednesday, and Beis Din, for whatever reason, established it a couple of days prior, a couple of days later, how do you explain that? When is Rosh Chodesh? And it must be that there is a spiritual Rosh Chodesh, and then there is a physical Rosh Chodesh. And B'chlal, as we learn in Hasidus, that everything that here is in this world, Begashmias, is simply mirroring, and it's really nishtalshel from this, it's a origin, which is the way this is Beruchnius. So you have the movements of the heavenly bodies the way they are physically, and they are mirroring movements of the heavenly bodies the way they move spiritually. And many times, whenever we learn parts of Torah that speak about the movements of the heavenly bodies, and what Chazal described does not appear at all to be how it works based on current understanding, well, one of the two, just to have the first of all, could be the current understanding is not yet correct. And even if indeed the current understanding is correct and it does not mirror, there are things in halacha that Chazal are describing the way things are working in its spiritual source. And primarily because of galus or for other reasons, its physical counterpart doesn't exactly or precisely mirror it. And I think that's a very important introduction to today's daf. I mean, first we're going to start off just quickly recapping that we had the Mishnah speaking about the definition of Derech Rechoika. And Derech Rechoika, the way we are learning Pshat Ula, not Rav Yehuda. Derech Rechoika means that when afternoon begins, you are min hamoidi'in eluchutz. And based on the premise that it will take you to walk in 6 hours in the afternoon, in the half of the day, it's going to take you to walk 15 mil. And that was based on the statement of Rabbi Yechanan that people walk 40 mil a day. But the way we had Rabbi Yechanan's version, 5 mil is between the crack of dawn and sunrise. The other 5 mil is after sunset until the stars come out. So there you have 30 mil left, and that's divided into half in the morning, half in the afternoon. So now we have this concept that it takes 15 mil you cover 15 mil when you walk during a half a day. So derech rechoika means that when the Mishnah says min hamoidin oluchutz, because from Moedian to the Azara is 15 mil. And if you are outside Moedian, further from Yerushalayim, then you won't be able to make it b'shas shchita. Now, these numbers will lead us into two important debates that the Gemara records that the Chachmei Yisrael, that the Jewish sages have with the sages of the nations of the world. This is the way it's described. Chachmei Umas Ha'olam and Chachmei Yisrael. And interestingly, in one of these machloikesin, the halacha follows Chachmei Umas Ha'olam. And Rabbi says that what the Chachamim of the nations of the world say appear to be more reasonable. We're going to learn both of these arguments. One of them I'll explain when we learn the Gemara the way I was taught Rambam. Now I have to just always thank Rabbi Yosef Lush, who taught us Kiddush HaChodesh, who taught us the Rambam's model of making the calendar. And the many concepts, when you learn the Rambam properly, that's the Seder that we learned, will help us tremendously understand certain statements in this Gemara. The other argument that I want to give in the intro, and listen to the words, is that the Chachmei Yisrael say that during the day, the sun is traveling under the Rakia, under the heavens, under the firmament. But at night, the sun, between sunset and the stars coming out, the sun, these are the words, they travel through the thickness of the firmament, they travel through the thickness of the sky, and then they go backwards from west to east over the firmament of the sky. I know that these words sound literally nonsensical, but God forbid, either we don't understand what they're saying, and when we'll learn this, I'll suggest perhaps what it means. Now it is the nations, the Chachamim of the nations of the world, here are being recorded here in the Gemara. You see in the times of the Gemara, they already knew the world is not flat, the world is a circle, is that the sun is orbiting around the world. And during the day, it's on top of the 180 that we can see. But at night, it simply continues to travel, but under the earth. And it doesn't go through the thickness of the sky and go backwards to be reborn in sunrise. And it is regarding this machlekes that Rabbi says that Niroin Divrei Chachamim will have to explain, and I'll suggest perhaps what the Chachmei Yisrael actually mean with these words. Based on our Gemara, we're going to also appreciate better this whole machlekes in halacha as to how much time does it take to walk a mil. Based on what we began learning yesterday, based on what we're going to clarify a bit more today, whether it's a 24-minute to walk a mil, whether it's 22.5 minutes to walk a mil, whether it is 18 minutes to walk a mil. And these, my friends, these questions affect so many eras in halacha, whether it comes, for example, to candle lighting, how many minutes before Shabbos the woman light candles, whether it comes, for example, how much after you finish the meal that you didn't bench, could you still bench? Right, the time that it takes to walk 4 mil, how much time is that? Is that 72 minutes? Is that 90 minutes? Ultimately, we're really going to have one of the two major places in Shas where we have the question of when is Tzeis HaKechavim? How much after Shkia, how much after sunset is Tzeis HaKechavim? Whether it is like we have in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Daled, 3/4 of a mil. If a mil is 18 minutes, then 3/4 of that is 13.5 minutes. We're speaking about practical halacha. How much after sunset, for example, can you say the Shema at night? Or like we have over here, that it is 4 mil. 4 mil after sunset is Tzeis HaKechavim. That's our Gemara over here. Really, we began yesterday. It's 5 mil, right? Rabbi Yochanan says in our version that it takes 5, that between the sunset and Tzeis HaKechavim, you walk 5 mil. Kedei hilu chamisha milin. But we're going to clarify it's 4 mil. So which one is it? That's 72 minutes or that's 90 minutes. That's the famous shiur that Rabbeinu Tam will be Pesachim Daf Tzadik Dalet. V'chulei. But the main bulk of the daf will be speaking about the movements of the sun to a certain degree. The size of the circumference of the world. It's going to be connected to the distance between the sun and the earth. And just a heads up that I'm going to be suggesting certain understandings in the Gemara that is not the way you'll find it if you have other Gemaras today that are beautifully translated. It's going to be a little bit different. And I might be wrong, but it's based on my learning with Rabbi Lush and trying to understand the Gemara to the best of my ability. And with that, let us start. We left off 5 lines from the top of the Amid. Here it's important. The Mishnah speaks about derech rechoika, machlokes in the Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva holds it's min hamoidiin ulachutz, based on Ula, that we're speaking about the time that it takes you to get to the time of Shchita, Zman Shchita, which means that it's the afternoon, that from noon, from after beginning of the afternoon until Shkia, Min Amidian is 15 mil. 15 mil, again, based on Rabbi Yechanan, you walk 40 mil a day, 5 is before the Nates, 5 is after the Shkia. So when you're dividing the afternoon from afternoon, literally, until the Shkia, you walk 15 mil. Tanach Rabbanan says the Beraisa, 5 lines from the top of the Amid. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shar kol v'dvari. Haya omed chutz l'moedian. And what happens that you're taka further than 15 mil, but you have access to a car. In those days, you have access to a horse. You can enter on a horse, besusim, or you have pradim, and you can make it there, and you didn't. So you would think, you're chayiv. Even though you were 15 mil away, but you could have made it there during the Zman HaShchita. No, says the Gemara, says the Beraisa, Talmud Leimer, ubederech lo yhoya. Kares, the penalty is only incurred if someone is not on a distant road. You are on a distant road. Similarly, if you were within the 15 mil, you were lifnin min amidian, but you, because of your circumstances, you don't have a normal car. Your car is a alta banged up, I don't know, Toyota Corolla. You have camels that they kratz, they don't move. Or karanis, or you have normal horses, but they are attached to wagons. The wagons are heavy. So maybe you'll be exempt. Because maybe it's subjective. Maybe you, with your circumstances, would not have been able to make it. Says the Gemara, says the Beraisa, no. Baderech means you are only exempt if you are on a distant road. You are not on a distant road. So this is a very important rule when it comes to Korban Pesach. We're speaking about objective time and not subjective time. To appreciate, very different contrast. When did we learn this lesson, say in Brachas? What did we learn that by Netilas Yadayim? How far do you have to travel to do Netilas Yadayim? So there we spoke out, or for a minyan, how far do you have to go out of your way if you're traveling to go to a minyan? We paskin, it's subjective. So if the sheet is hiluch mil, now that we have a car, it's a meal would take, let's say a meal is 18 minutes. If you are within 18-minute drive, even though driving 18 minutes can be 18 million or can be 20 million, or God forbid, if you're speeding, it can be more than that. But when it comes to this halacha, it's not about subjective. It's not about would you make it. There's an objective time of walking. And going to Yerushalayim is connected to walking with your feet. And the Chazal tell us, that's the base, that in 6 hours, we objectively cover 15 mil. If you were within 15 mil, you chayiv kares. If you didn't do it, if you were outside 15 mil, even though you had means of transportation, you would have reached there, you won't be chayiv kares. Now, we're not saying that you shouldn't go there. Let's remember that Rav Nachman says hurtza. But the kares is only if you are outside the 15 mil. Okay, so based on the words we said in the intro today, and let's go with the concept as much as possible, and the Rebbe always had that shita, that not only did Chazal speak about these movements, the way they are in its spiritual source, but our goal is to try to see how this is aligned even in today's reality. So Amarav, Shita Alfei Parsei Hava Alma. Rashi says the sun travels 6,000 parsa in its travel time from sunrise to sunset. Now, if we're going to divide the circle into 360 degrees, so sunrise to sunset, let's say, is 180 degrees, which is basically half of the circumference of the world. The way the pshat is that the world is comprised of 600 parsa, just to appreciate. One parsa, we said, is 4 mil. 6,000 parsa, I'm sorry. So 6,000 parsa is 24,000 kilometers. I'm saying 24,000 mil, 24,000 kilometers, which would then mean that the circumference of the world would be 48,000 million kilometers. Today, be'erach, now that we have better instruments, I Googled it. I don't remember this from my schooling, but it's 40,000 kilometers. And I know it sounds close. It's not close enough. We're going to refute it. But like here, those words, the sun travels 6,000 parsa. Again, the way Rashi learns that the sun travels 6,000 parsa, which is all of the space that it travels over from sunrise to sunset. That's 180. That's half of the circumference of the world. And statement number 2, the sumcha derakia, based on the words that Chachmei Yisrael hold, that sunset is not only that the sun is going under the horizon. These are the words, that when sunset begins, the sun begins to travel through the thickness of the sky. And as long as it doesn't reach the other side, you can still see some of the rays of the light. What is night? What is tzeis? No rays of the sun. No rays of the sun, because the sun came to the other side of the thickness of the sky. And what happens when it gets there? These are the words. It changes its course, mamash 180, and it goes backwards from west to east. This has nothing to do with the way people think that they were saying the earth was flat. That for sure not. I'll give a suggestion on Amud Beis. So it goes backwards. Now, how long does it take to go through the thickness of the sky? So based on the world being the world traveling over 6,000 parsa, so the sumcha derakia, the thickness of the sky, is 1,000 parsa. And Rava got to that based on what we learned yesterday. And then we're going to have 4 questions against Rava. That will be basically the soul of today's daf. Now, one second. Chada, first of all, Rava says Gemara. That's the tradition that I received. Now, again, just to make it right, the final time, Chevra, not only is this so beruchnius, but there is something begashmius that this is emes, and the lack of understanding it is our lack. And v'chada svara. And also Rava says, I have a reason to, so to say, to prove that this is correct. Number 1, what's the svara? The Gemara is a fact. He received that as a tradition. What's the svara? Since Rava holds that we learned yesterday. 10 parsois, 40 mil. And how do we divide the 40 mil? So from the crack of dawn until Netzachama, you travel 5 mil. From Shias Acham until Tzeis HaGechavim, you travel 5 mil. So how much do you travel on the ground from sunrise to sunset? You travel, my friends, 30 mil. 30 mil. How much is the 5 mil? Now we're speaking about Shkia until Tzeis. Shkia to Tzeis is when the sun is traveling through the thickness of the sky to get to the other side. How much does it travel? 5 mil. How much is 5 out of 30? A sixth. A sixth. Good with me? So based on it being a 6, so if it travels from sunrise to sunset 6,000 parses, so the thickness of the sky is 1,000, which is a 6 of 6,000, right? So nimso challenge is the Gemara. It's not enough 1. 4 kashas on Rava. Meisvei. First of all, you're quoting a Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer. Oivav shel rakia echad masara b'yom. Also based on Chachmei Yisrael, that during sunset, again, the sun is going through the thickness of the sky. The thickness of the sky, Atana says, it's a 10th, same concept, it's a 10th of space of the 180 degrees above the ground. And Teda and Rabbi Yehuda Taka brings a similar proof, but it's not the same number. Here, it's aligned with Rabbi Yechanan. Now, really, Rabbi Yechanan has to be aligned with the Tanach, Eser Parsois. But here we have a different version, not 5 between Alois and Nates and 5 from, no, it's 4 and 4. Only Arbas Milan. And we accept this in halacha. This is a halachic, this has halachic consequence. From Shkia until Tzeis, how much time for you to walk will it take? Notice how much ground do you have to walk until you go from Shkia until Tzeis, the time that it takes you to walk? 4 million. Upa. So it's not like we mentioned 5 out of 30. 5 out of 30 is a 6th. It's not true. It's not. It's 4 out of 32. How much is 4 out of 32? It's an 8th. Now he said it's a 10th. I'll tell you why he said it's a 10th. Because 4 from 40 is a 10th. So it's whether it's milagav or milabada. Don't get stuck on that. The point is it's not a 6th. So if Rabbi's svara was 1,000 from 6,000 is the same ratio of 5 out of 30. It's not 5 out of 30. It's 4 out of 32. When you include everything together, or 4 out of 32 is an 8th, but it's not a 6th. So indeed, Rava's svara is refuted. More than that, Ula is refuted because Ula, right? How did Ula get to 15 mil? He got to 15 mil because he deducted the 5 and the 5, but it's not 5 and 5. How much is it really? It's 4 and 4. If it's 4 and 4, how much do you travel from sunrise to sunset? 32. Divide 32 and a half, you have 16, not 15. So l'chayda min amidin or l'chut should have been 16. So Ula is refuted. And maybe even Rabbi Yechanan is refuted. We're going backwards. So the Gemara says, no. We misquoted Rabbi Yechanan. All I said was that the total that a person travels in a day is 40 mil. That's what I said. Now, let me tell you the mistake that they made. It's beautiful, right? We spoke yesterday that people begin to travel from Alois. In Rabbi Yechanan's reality, he began a trip before Alois. More than that, he ended a trip. I know that it's not going to align with the first daf in Pesachim. Good. He didn't end it by Shkia. He didn't end it by Tzeis. He traveled after Tzeis. He set 5 mil. But he said 5 mil because he would walk more than from Alois until Neitz. More from Shkia. If you would only walk from Alois until Neitz or from Shkia until Tzeis, it would only cover 4 mil. The Kachashvan, because they included the Kadma v'Chashoicha. Again, Rabbi Yechanan's, in his reality, when people went on a trip, they woke up before the crack of dawn. They began to walk before the crack of dawn. When they came to the ending of the day, they worked harder. They went after Tzeis. So yes, he said 5 mil and 5 mil. Yes, he said, but really, if you were to walk only during from Alois until Tzeis, you would not cover a full 40 mil. Okay. Because Rab Chanina, if you remember, Rab Chanina says that I saw the location, right? It says that Vayoitzu HaMalachim, and Loit, right, he reached Soyar, and he says, and I saw that the distance between Sodom and Soyar is 5 mil. And over there, Loit did not begin to travel before Alois. So during Alois until Neitz, you did cover 5 mil. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a contradiction, because Vayoitzu, it says that the angels hurried Loit. Hurrying doesn't only mean that they hurried him to begin the trip ASAP. Hurrying means that they traveled quicker. That type of trip is not expected of us. If you walk average from Alois until Neitz, and the same will be from Shkia until Tzeis, it's 4 mil. But what we did refute is that the svara of Rava, of that from Shkia until Tzeis, is a 1/6 of the sunrise to sunset. It's not a 1/6, it's an 1/8 or it's a 1/10, and therefore his cheshbon of 1,000 parsas off. Now, before we go on, here is the issue. The issue is bottom line we're saying is that if you want to measure, see today we use a clock and minutes, from Shkia until Tzeis, how much time needs to go by for you to hit Tzeis HaKechavim. So now we're learning a Braisa, 4 mil, Kedei Hiluch 4 mil. Problem, Shabbos Daf Lamed Daled, if you remember, the whole Bein HaShmoshes, because there's a Bein HaShmoshes after Shkia until Tzeis, there's Bein HaShmoshes. How much is Bein HaShmoshes? So Rabbi Yehuda, same Rabbi Yehuda says 3/4 of a mil. 3/4, not 4 mil. Now, what's 3/4 of a mil? By the way, this another very important, Chaval, such a packed daf today, that how much time do you walk in a mil? Based on Ula's cheshbon, that 1 mil is if you walk during the day 30, not 32, 30, then how much is 1 out of 30? How much is 1 out of 30? If it takes you 12 hours to cover 30 mil, then in 1 mil, it takes 24 minutes. That's the cheshbon. It's Ula's shorter amount during the day, means that in 1 mil, you cover more. You need more time for 24 minutes to a mil. 24 minutes to a mil. According to the Braisa, Braisa's cheshbon, it comes out a mil is 22.5 minutes. That's the source over here. Then you have other sources to make you go the quickest. 18 minutes for 1 mil. So go with any cheshbon you want. With 3/4 of a mil, is 7. Let's go with 18 minutes. It's 72. I'm sorry. If a meal is 18 minutes, 3/4 of a meal is 13 and a half minutes. And that's the way most halachic authorities paskin, that whenever sunset is, you add 13 and a half minutes. That's not the Alter Rebbe. There's a very important letter. There's no time to get into right now. We're more machler. When do we establish Seis HaKechavim? But the majority of the people will without the Alter Rebbe's chumrah, will understand that 3/4 of a mil. Problem is, here we're saying 4 mil. That's the big question. And we learn Tosfos and we learn Shabbos. Shabbos daf lamed daled and Pesachim daf tzadik daled. So the Tosfos here writes, look inside the second Tosfos. Rabbi Yehuda oimer mishkei secham v'adei sechavim arba milim. Kash l'Rabbeinu tam. The besoipa mem adlikin Omar. I don't know if Danny learned that day, if I learned that in English, but the Gemara over there says, Ezu bein hashmashis. And bein hashmashis is after Shkia until it says, Mishetishka hachama calls man shepnei nisum chamadimim divrei Rabbi Yehuda umaskinen hasam the bein hashmashis Rabbi Yehuda is tulasa via mil. And here Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's saying, Etaka not 5 mil, at least we're not going 5 mil, oy gewalt, imagine that, but it's going to be 4 mil. So here's the big chiddush of Tosfos, that you have 2 shkiyas. 2 shkiyas. There is when the sun begins to dip under the horizon, that's shkiya number 1. According to the Rabbeinu Tam, it's not even bein hashmashas. From then, what really happens is, from then until it says is 4 mil. If a mil is 18 minutes, 72 minutes. But the final 3/4 of a mil of the 72 minutes, we call that the second shkiya. And from then until the end of 72 minutes, that's bein hashmashas. So from the beginning of the first shkiya until the end, until Seis HaKechavim is 4 mil. But up until 13 and a half minutes prior to the 72 minutes, it's yoy mamish. No, the Rabbeinu Tam is the one that places shkia much later. And when you follow the Rabbeinu Tam fully, it's lekula also. It's not only a chumrah. It's not only when Shabbos goes out. It's that shkia really begins, not when we call shkia, but much more than that. Okay. Now, the other go'onim have a whole different understanding. The bekitzer, they don't say there are 2 shkias. They say there are 2 tseis hakechavims. But there's only 1 shkia. And we now, the Alter Rebbe follows the sheet of the Go'ainim. The Alter Rebbe writes strong words in his letter. He writes that you see that what the Rabbeinu Tam is neged, the chush. In other words, again, this concept that some of these concepts, they spoke about the way things are in its ruchniistic source. But the Poel Mamish, it does not take 72 minutes, right? B'metzias. From when Shkia begins, the night begins way before 72 minutes. Anyways, this is the second source in Shas regarding that topic. Coming back over here. Again, Chavah, we're learning words, and don't jump on me, and if I'm wrong, I stand corrected right away. I'm going to understand some of this Gemara, not the way you're going to read it over here, and I hope that there's some truth in what we're saying. Tashema Nacha Kasha against Rava. That how does Rava say that during the day the sun travels 6,000 parsas? That means that the 180 of the earth is 6,000 parsa. When it says in a brisa that Mitzrayim he arba meis parsa al arba meis parsa, that's the size of Egypt, and Mitzrayim is 1/60th of the country or the continent called Kush, and Kush is 1/60th of the world. And let's finish reading the brisa. And the world is 1/60th of the Gan. We're separating Gan from Eden. There's Gan Eden and then there's Eden. Gan is only 1/60th of Eden. Chayes, theEdenproject.org. Please make your donation today. It's like a big project. Chazal say it's huge. And Eden is 1/60th of Gehenim. And how, the meaning of that? That Eden is 1/60th of Gehenim. Where do you find enough people to fill up Gehenim? It means Gehenim is empty. That's what it means. Nimtza, kol elam kuloi, kikisha kidei leGehenim. If you compare now, 60 times 60 times 60, go and use your calculator, won't be able to handle these numbers. So the world is so small in comparison to Gehenim. But bottom line is, just focus on the fact that even if we're going to understand that the 400 by 400, right, the total area of Mitzrayim, now you have to take that. Kush is 60 times bigger, and the world, so it's 60 times 60. We're speaking about, according to this, that the circumference of the world, the square area of the world is 576 million parsa, which would make the sunrise to sunset, if you make the cheshbon, not 6,000 parsa, but 42,500 parsa. And then there are other Rishonim that understand the world in these numbers to be much bigger, much bigger. How can I say 6,000 parsa? So tiyufta. Okay, next, Tashema, Tanach of Elyahu. If you remember, Rav Anan merited that Elyahu HaNavi would teach him Torah. And then there was an incident, and Rav Anan, according to his Madrega, did something that wasn't for him 100% correct. And because of that, for a while, Elyahu HaNavi stopped coming to him. And then when Elyahu HaNavi came back, he couldn't handle the oil, the light, so he went into a box. And that's our tradition, that there's Elyahu Rabbah. That is what he wrote down, what he heard from Elyahu HaNavi before he needed to, so to say, be metzamtzem himself. And then there's Elyahu Zuta. So that's the ton of in one of these Devei Elyahus, we learned the following. Rabbi Nassan Oimer, that call Hayishav Kol Itachas Koichav Echad Yoshev, that all of the Yishuv, all of the civilized portion of the world is sitting under one star. Teda, what's the proof? Because Sharei Adam Noisen Ein Koichav Echad, pick a star in the skies and look at it, and go to the Mizrach as far as you could. That you didn't. Your position relative to the star did not change, right? If I'm driving by a building over here, if I'm driving by, well, the building will first be, to my right, but to the front of me, and then it's going to be to my side, then it's going to be behind me. When you look at a star, no matter how long you travel, the star stays in the same place. The star doesn't go to the right, to the left, to the front, to the back. Now, what does that prove? Now, again, guys, I'm suggesting this the way I understand it. Why is that way? It's because of the distance. Let's do a distance. Because the star is that far away. So therefore, your little movement, if you take into account and the distance between you and the star, it doesn't affect anything. So the way I understand the Gemara's Kasha, how can you compare, let's say it's a sixth, but how thick is the sky? The sky is very thick, so to say, because the distance between here and the stars is humongous. So it doesn't make sense to say it's a sixth. It's if you have to get to the other side of the firmament, you have to travel much more. I think that's the refutation. Michlal, but here are the words. The Chol Yishuv Kol Itachas Koichav Echad Yoshev, so Tiyufta. Well, let me look inside the words of Rashi. Rashi is 3 and 4 lines under the Gemara. In other words, if the whole civilization is under one star, so if we're saying that, and the Rashi is going to write that the Yishuv of the world is 1,000 parsa, so then there should only be 6 stars in the sky, but there are many more. How do you have space for all these stars? I think Rashi is trying to say, and what's the answer? Because of the distance. The further up you go, the more space you have. So something that's this much over here, like for the sun, when you see the sun moving in your perception a little bit, you know how much more it's moving in the heavens? Because it's much farther away. So when you're speaking about covering space from the sun over the ground versus it going through the firmament, that means it's going up. It's going through it. It's going to the depth. It's all different cheshbon and has to travel a lot more. That's the way I understand it. Next kasha, tiyufta. But you see how many kashas, how rare is this? Okay, kashima.
Is that a tiyufta of Rava? Because he learned it with Elyahu HaNavi, so therefore Rava's wrong? Is that the idea?
Any brisa. Any brisa refutes Anamayr. Now, Egla B'Tzafin V'Akrav B'Darim. We're speaking here about the mazalos. We know the mazal is in the Galgal Hashmini. We'll have time. We'll explain this on Amud Beis. And the point here is, okay, the way I understand it is that we're just speaking about the 180 degrees. That when you are on the earth and you look up, you won't be able to see all of the constellations. You can't see the 12 constellations go around the circumference of the whole 360. You can only see 180 from horizon to horizon. And in the heavens, you're going to see in the north the constellation of Egla. We call it shiur. The Goyim call it Taurus. Let's go to the words of Chazal, Egla. And Akrav, the Goyim call that Scorpio, is going to be B'Darim. That's the 180. And B'Chola Yishuv Kulei Eina Yoshev Ela Ben Egla LaAkrav. What you can see here on earth is going to be in this 180 compared to that. And Yishuv Kulei Eina Ela Sha'achas B'Yoyim. Here we're speaking about, again, the way I understand it, we're speaking about time zones. Now, I'm going to say like this. How, when by me, 12 o'clock, the sun is over my sky. If you're going to be a certain distance away, since the world is round, the sun won't be over your head. Who knows how much space do you need for each time zone? I can tell you this. I remember from this kid in miles. In miles, it's 1,000 something. In kilometers, it's 1,600. Guys, I'm not precise, but I'm correct. So the point is that the way I understand the Gemara, 180, right? We're speaking about time zones. If I need 1,600 kilometers for each time zone, how many time zones do you have? How many hours do you have in 180? 12, right? You can see half of the heavens. How many time zones can you see in the heaven when you look up?
One.
I think, no, I'm not when you look up directly. I think you're seeing 15 time zones. I think it's saying 180 divided by 12 hours is 15. Each time zone is 15 degrees. Let me word it that way. Correct? Each time zone is 15 degrees. That's correct. It has to be that way. Yeah, Rabbi Chaim is here with the math. So if each time zone, let's say, is 1,600 kilometers, around 1,600 mil, times 12 is 19,000 mil, or 19,200 mil, the way I understand. So it's smaller than what he said. That's what I pointed out before. 6,000 parsa be'erech, we're speaking about is 24,000 kilometers, which would mean that the whole world is 48. That's not 48, different size. That's the way I understand this. Good. I just want to read it inside. That you can see from 1 degree, from the 180 circumference, you see the egla, you go from the egla to the akra. B'chol yishuv kulei is only 1 hour by yom. What does that mean? She'ein chama nechneses liyishuv el sha'achas b'yom. There's only 1 hour in the day that the sun is above your head. Teda, that shebechabesh chamas b'mizrach. 11 a.m. the sun is towards the east. At 1 p.m. the sun is already in the Ma'ariv. How much time do you have that the sun is directly above your sky? Only for 1 hour approximately. And here the words are from the half of the sixth to the half of the second. That is when the sun is above the sky of the top of every person. Again, I think the point here is to point out that there's different time zones. That when the sun is above my head, after I travel a certain distance, at that same time, when it's midday for me, it's not going to be midday for you over there. And it's 15 degrees every time zone. And that's going to bring it to 1,600 kilometers. And then you do that times 12, and you're not going to have the same 6,000 pars. Nachakash. Weiter. You can learn it otherwise. Gesundheit. Tashema. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakai. Matshuva heshivati basker lo isorasha. What did God respond? And not even directly. It was just an echo of God's voice that God responded to the wicked Nebuchadnezzar, Bishasha Amar, the last line of the Amid, when he was saying, I'll become godlike. And the way he expressed that was by saying that Ella al Bamasi of, that I will ascend over the tops of the clouds. I'm going to go all the way up to the heavens. I'm going to go through the firmament. Adam ala Elyon, and therefore I will be just like God. You know what God told him? You don't have enough time, not even a fraction of that, to travel through the heavens. And the point will be here that the depths of the heaven is much more than you think if something has to go through the space. Ben Benoi doesn't mean a grandchild, it means a great grandchild, as Rashi says. Ben Benoi. That Nebuchadnezzar was from the seed of the evil Nimrod. What did Nimrod do? He was the first one that had the similar concept that he thought that he's going to go through he's going to go above all the heavens. Oh, God is saying this against me, God Almighty, through his kingdom, by building the Tower of Babel. But God is telling you want to do the same thing, you don't have enough time to do it. How long do people live? 70 years. As it says in the Chumash. Okay, so listen to these words. Guys, these are words of Chazal that there's a soid here. And min ha'aretz ad l'rakia, from the earth until the first firmament. Gemara and Chagiga says that there are 7 rakiyas, whatever that means. So from the earth until the first rakiya, mahalach chamesh me'eh shana. Takes 500 years to walk. And then the oivav of rakiya itself is mahalach me'eh shana. Ubein kol rakiya v'rakiya, again mahalach me'eh shana. Ubein uvechein bein kol rakiya v'rakiya, again 500 years. So you don't have enough time to get anywhere. You're not going to go above the clouds and you'll be Adam al Elyon. God says, you know what's going to be to you? Ach el Sha'oil Turad, you're going to go down to hell. El Yarke say boy to the depths of the pit. Now, the way we have over here, Rashi brings from the Gemara in Chagiga that the area of the earth is the same of between the earth and the heavens, which would then mean that it would take you 500 years to walk around the earth. This is what Rashi quotes in Chagiga. The way I understand over here, it has to be based on Rishonim, is that another emphasis is that once you're going up, Rabbi's comparing the sun's movement over the earth that we can see, over the 180 of the eagle, of the Kadur Haaretz, to the sun going through the firmament of the heaven. You can't compare one to the other. Because if it would only travel the 1,000 parts, it wouldn't get anywhere. It wouldn't get behind the firmament when we're learning over here that it's Mahalach Chamish Mei Yeshana. Okay. So again, Nacham Alti Yufta. So these four kashas refuted Rava, and we leave it at that. Now, this is the words. Now, let me give one final intro. The Rebbe, as we all know, and how many letters did he have to write on this topic? There's one thing that the Rebbe insisted on when it comes to astronomy, and that is that when Chazal placed the earth in the center, in the solar system, not the sun in the center, that we should, God forbid, not view this as that they did the best they could and they did it based on the science of the time. The Rebbe explains to great people that quote my name. People were shocked that the Rebbe kept on insisting that the earth is in the center. Not only conceptually, because the purpose of creation is for us here on earth. So we are the center of creation, but therefore, physically, the earth is in the center. The Rebbe writes that all of the cheshbonos of the real updated science, it cannot determine who centers whom. Everything, according to current scientific understanding, is relative. The Rebbe quotes the second theory of Einstein, that actually science today not only does not know, it says that there is no absolute center. It's all relative. If you are on the earth, then the earth is in the center. And the calculations that we make to get to the moon and to get to Mars work the same, whether you put the earth in the center, whether you put the sun in the center, whether you put Mars in the center or the moon, v'chulei. The Torah looks at the world as in the center. That's non-negotiable. Now, even the Goyim that the Gemara are quoting never wrote the earth is flat. The earth is round. So therefore, the sun is going around the earth. So physically, by sunset, like we just mentioned, Chazal knew about time zones. It's obvious. It's simple chachmadis. So they understood that when it's day over, when it's night over here, it's day under the earth. How do they have the day? From the sunlight. They knew the sun physically is going under the earth. However, there are two debates that they are recorded. Everything that I'm saying, might be wrong, but l'chayda they're connected. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I'm going to go in the right order. Very good. Around the earth, space is a creation. It's not a vacuum of space. This area that's in between here and the moon is called a galgal. The galgal is not a tangible matter of creation. I know that there are better scientific words, but it's a thing that God created. It actually has intelligence, as the Rambam writes. And all of the planets are in Galgalim. Now, there are many Galgalim, so the moon is in the closest Galgal. And when we speak about the Shiva Koich Veleches, so we write the 7 moving planets, so the further away you go from the earth, there is a Galgal around the Galgal around the Galgal. Think about an onion peel. So there's one around the other, or put the earth in the center and have a see-through soccer ball that has depth, but it's see-through. And then around the earth, there's another one, and then there's another one. It's not surrounding it just with a little ring. It's 360 from all sides. And we divide generally the Galgalim into 8 Galgalim. So you have the 7 moving Shiva Koich Veleches, what the Goyim call all of the bodies in the solar system. And then you have, as Chazal put together everything else, all in the 8th Galgal. Then there is this metaphysical 9th Galgal into which we project all of the mazalos, v'chulei. It's not negay for you, but every mazal is in a galgal. Now the question is, what is moving? Is the galgal fixed, but the planet is moving? Or is the planet fixed in the galgal, even though the galgal is not tangible, but it's stuck in it, and it is only the galgal that's moving? That's the first debate. Tana Rabbanan, Chachmi Yisrael Oimrim, galgal kavua. The galgal is fixed. It's the mazolois that are moving in the galgal. And Chachmei Umas Oilam say, no, that the galgal is doing the movement, the mazal is fixed. Amar Rebbe, Shuva L'Divrayim. They're wrong. I can refute them. Why is that? Because guys, when we are going to project the zodiac, which are all of the stars that are in the 8th galgal, that from our perspective, especially during the times of the flood, when you looked at them, in every approximate 30 degrees in the sky, 30 degrees in the sky is a 12th, right, of the 360. There was an image that those stars formed, we call them the mazolois, that the way the mazolois are going around the world, they are not exactly aligned on top of the equator. They are tilted. Now, if I would have a globe, or if you look at the pictures in your Gemaras, you'll see that tilt. And some of 6 of the 12 mazolois are in the north, and the other 6 are in the south of the equator. Now, we never find, says Rebbe, that Eglah will be in the south of the equator. Eglah, Taurus, is always in the north of the equator. Akrab is always going to be in the south of the equator, never in the opposite. So what does that prove? That the galgal is fixed, because so the star is stuck in the galgal. So since these galgalim are fixed in a tilt, and it is only the mazolis that are moving in them, so they will always keep, so to say, they'll stay on their track. This picture won't help you at all. If the Chachmei Umas Ha'olam would have been right, that it is the galgal that's moving, the galgal is non-material. The galgal, l'chayra, should be more fluid. What's stopping the galgal to shift its entire tilt? That's his raya. His raya know that the galgalim are fixed, and every planet has to stay within that track. So since the track is on the tilt, the way it is tilted, it's always going to be that way. Says the Gemara, no, they can be right that the mazolos can be fixed in the galgalim. The galgalim are the ones that are moving, and even though the galgalim don't have material, they're not gashmi, but one galgal is within the galgal above it, within the galgal beneath it, and it is that sandwiching, that alignment, that doesn't allow the galgalim to change their tilt. And he gives 2 physical examples. One is kiboitzina derechaya, that when you have a mill is basically at least two stones. So one stone is moving, but it cannot intrude in the space of the stone underneath it or in the stone above it. So the galgal beneath and the galgal above will keep those galgalim on their tilt. Another example will be like it's like a pivot in the door. So you have various pieces of metal. They're not connected, but one does not allow the other to leave its orbit. If not, there's no room for it to move. So therefore, there's no raya fakert. It could be that they are right, that it is only the galgalim that are moving, but the mazolis are affixed. And now comes the other machlokes. The suggestion here is one is connected to the other. That that by day, we can look up to the heavens, we see the sun. So the sun is under the rakia. But at night, where does the sun go? They say, like we said on Amud Aleph, it goes through the thickness of the heavens, and then it goes from west to east. It moves in the opposite direction. And the Chachmei Umas Ha'olam say, no, and the sun doesn't change its movement. It keeps on traveling. From our perspective, it goes under the horizon. And at night, it's under the earth. Now, there's no debate that the physical sun is under the earth. So my suggestion is, based on the machlokes above, that you have the stars, you have the planets, and then you have the galgal. L'cha'oira, the Chachmei Yisrael are not speaking about the physical chama, they're speaking about the galgal of the chama. That the galgal, guys, we learned that Rambam. The Rambam says that the moon has 4 galgalim, if you remember. Not one galgal. The moon has 4 galgalim. And it's almost like one galgal passes the moon over to the next galgal, and it's very complex movements. Could be that the galgal of the sun, not the sun, the galgal of the sun, at some point, from our perspective, it goes through the space of the sky, and then it goes backwards on top.
Rabbi, what's this word for galgal? How are you translating it? Like hemisphere?
Perhaps. Just think about the empty space that's completely is hugging the earth. So between here, correct, between here and the moon, first of all, you have a couple of layers that are still connected to the earth. But after a certain point, after you go through the fire, right, which is the Yesod HaEsh, then you are in the galgal of the Levana. And every galgal has a different depth. But the galgal is a thing. And the galgal, let's go, the galgal is moving. It's connected one machlokes to the other. The galgalim are moving. The mazolis are fixed in it. Now, Chachmei Yisrael, based on their shita, one is connected to the other, that the mazolos can move independent of the mazel. It mamash fits with this concept. So then you can say that the galgal of the chama goes through the thickness and it goes above it, but the mazel, the sun, keeps on traveling on its own track. One machlokes is definitely very deeply connected to the other. Omar Rebbe, and here Rebbe not only attacked them, Rebbe says that the Chachmei Umas Olam are right. Omar Rebbe v'nidim divrei midvareinu. They are right. Now the way we are learning is we're speaking not about the sun, we're speaking about the galgal of the sun. Now the galgal of the sun has influence on the world. Not only the sun, the galgal of the sun. He says by the fact that by day the waters under the ground, the waters in the springs are cold, but by night they get hot. How do they get hot? They must get hot because the galgal of the sun is under the earth. The galgal stays under the earth. There's only one galgal of the sun, and the galgal brings about heat. The galgal of the sun is close to the earth. The galgal of the sun at night is even closer to what's inside the earth than to what's above the earth because it's underneath it. We had that before in Pesachim regarding Mayim Shalanu. Why do we have to take water out and leave it rest? Because we don't want for the waters to be warm, because when you have warm waters, you mix it with flour, then it becomes chametzik very quick. That's all based on this concept. The sun travels high in the sky. Guys, we're not speaking about the sun. Again, I'm doing all about the galgal. And there are various galgalim in the galgal of the sun. That's why during the world is hot and the spring waters are cold. During the winter, the chama or the galgal of the chama is going low in the skies. That's why the world is cold. Go understand this. The sun is closer to us. That's the simple pshat. So that's why the world is cold and the springs are hot. We're learning the side of the Torah. All this is riddles, and it's important to have that approach. And we do the best to understand it, and a lot that has to be explained. But God forbid to take this the way you're reading it literally and then to laugh at what you think is their nonsensical understanding of Metzias when it's mamish the opposite. Tanach Rabbanan. Again, we're speaking about the effect that the Galgalim have on the weather. The Galgalim, not the sun. Tanach Rabbanan. The sun travels along 4 paths. Every path, I understand, is a different galgal. Nisan, Ir, Sivan, that is when Mahalachas Vaharim. Literally, the sun is traveling through the mountains. And why does that happen? In order to melt the snow. Tammuz of Elul, that's when the sun is traveling, or the galgal of the sun is traveling in the Yishuv, above the civilized part of the world, to ripen the crops. Tishrei, Mar Cheshvan, and Kislev, guys, Autumn, that is when the sun is traveling by Yamim over the seas, to dry the rivers. We're learning Oisius. Not in order for the seas not to dry up. All right. In other words, we want for the planting season to be able to properly germinate. Atkan divrei soid. All of this just came about with the definition of derech rechoika, that the Tanakh in our Mishnah Rabbi Kiva holds that it's min hamidin or luchutz. We simply wanted to establish how far is that. We established it was 15 mil. And according to Ula that says that you have to reach the Azara during the time of the Shechita, it means that if you are more than 15 mil in any direction from Yerushalayim, even though you have like we began today's shiur, if you have a horse, if you have today a car, and you can travel that easily, you're not mechuyev to bring the Koren Pesach. If you didn't bring it, you're not going to be chayv kares. Now, Rabbi Eliezer has a much more lenient opinion. The Groisa Shamuti, the Beis Shammai, he says that if you are outside the threshold, you're not chayv kares. Va'afal gav the matzi oyel, 2 lines in the white lines. We don't tell him that. And if he didn't do it, he's not chayv kares. And obviously, Shitas Rab Sheshes simply doesn't fit over here. To say that if he wanted to and he brought it, loy hurtza, can't be. The machlekes of Rav Sheshes and Ula was only l'chayda l'shitas Rabbi Akiva. Yehudi Yadel, if you have a Jew that's not circumcised yet, and he had an opportunity to do so, says in a brayso that if he did not circumcise himself in order to bring the Korban Pesach, he's Anush Kadosh. You know who says that? Rabbi Eliezer. Mamish is a contradiction, because here Rabbi Eliezer is saying if he was not there, then he's not going to be Chayiv Kadosh. I make an effort, take one step, okay, but he didn't. He didn't do a circumcision. So Oral cannot bring the Korban Pesach. Amar Abaye. First answer is don't compare ones and apples and oranges. Derech Rechoika, this dispensation is only if the only problem was you were tahar, you were circumcised. Elamah, you're Derech Rechoika. But the Ein Derech Rechoika l'tamei. If there was any other reason other than Derech Rechoika, that tamei here means you are uncircumcised. The Torah didn't give you a dispensation. If you are able to make a bris milah and do the Pesach, and if you didn't, you will be Chayiv Kadosh. Rava says, there are 3 versions of Rabbi Eliezer. This is going to be a beautiful Gemara, even though the Gemara is only going to bring 2. But Rashi, we'll read the Rashi. Just like you see, there were 2 versions of Rabbi Eliezer. Mistama, there's a 3rd. Rava Amar, that Shitas, there are 2 versions, Bishitas, or 3, we'll see 3 versions, Bishitas Rabbi Eliezer. The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer, Oimer, Nemar, Richuk b'makom b'Pesach. And the concept of Richuk b'makom you have by Meiser. That's a pasuk, right, that we read every Yom Tov, that if a Yid is far from Yerushalayim, he's allowed to redeem the produce of Meiser Sheni, and with the money, go to Yerushalayim and use it for food and drink and anointing stuff. Now, how far do you need to be outside Yerushalayim not to be obligated to schlep the produce? You know how far? 1 step out of Yerushalayim. Outside the area from where you can eat Pesach Sheni, then you already have the heter, the dispensation, you may redeem it. Afkan, how far out of Yerushalayim is called Derech Rechoika? Guys, we did not learn this in the Mishnah. Chutz la'achilosai means you have to be outside Yerushalayim, not outside the threshold of the Azala, because Pesach is Kachum Kalam. Kachum Kalam can be consumed in Yerushalayim. If you are outside the place of Achila, that's when you're not going to be Chayiv Kadosh. Now, Rabbi Yosi bar Rabbi Yehuda Omer, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, which is the version we had in our Mishnah, no, the same comparison to Meiser Sheni, but it's Chutz la'asiyasai. It's outside the place where it has to be slaughtered. Where is that? That's in the temple, and that's the version in our Mishnah. So Rashi, 4 lines before the bottom of the Amud says, hold on, this didn't answer our kasha. Says Rashi, Alma, we see ikatanoi de pligi with Rabbi Eliezer. The Tani, the oral loimal, fakert. Let's say that the Tana that we just quoted, that if you have someone that's an oral and did not do circumcision, he's going to be Chayiv Kadosh. That will be a 3rd opinion. That even if you are outside Moedian, it will be like outside Moedian. When are you going to be Derech Rechoika? When you're outside the Moedian. In other words, according to the Braisa, that a Yehudi Arel Shalemal Anush Kanush Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that version holds, that Rabbi Eliezer holds, exactly like Rabbi Akiva. That only when you are unable to bring it, that's when you'll be exempt. If you are able to walk and to get there, you will be Chayiv Kadosh, which is why if you are able to circumcise yourself and you didn't, you will be Chayiv Kadosh. So B'kitzur, there are 3 Shitas, B'shitas Rabbi Eliezer, and now the Gemara concludes, Come on, Oslo Hadam Rabbi Yitzchak by Rabbi Yosef, that b'tmeim halech achar roiv ha'imdim bo azara, and if you are outside the azara, right? It's all about we count only the azara area. Come on, Rabbi Yosef by Rabbi Yehuda, Shama Mishum Rabbi Eliezer, like we have in our Mishnah, that the temple courtyard is near, and outside that you are b'derech rechoika. Now the final sheet in our Mishnah was Rabbi Yossi that agreed to the version of the Mishnah of Rabbi Eliezer, and he was medayik from the dot you have on top of the letter Hey in the word rechoika. When the Torah wrote derech, really the ikir chasam and a sefer, the Bach has to be read here. Derech rechoika. Derech Rechoika, you would think it's far. You would think that the Torah only exempts someone who's 2 days walk away or 3 days walk away. Hey, you know, I know that it's too late when it's a 14th afternoon, but you should have started to travel earlier. No, that's why when the Torah says uba derech loy hoya, the Torah doesn't say uba derech rechoika loy hoya. The second time the Torah takes out the word rechaika. In other words, as long as you are not on a road, you are exempt. As long as you are on a road, you are exempt. It's only when you were not on a road, you're chayiv kares. What are we talking about? We're talking about the road leading up to the Azara. As long as you are on a road, you are on a road, and therefore you will be exempt from kares. Chevra, to be continued tomorrow on Daf Tzadikei. I want to say is that the Art Scroll and many others, they are built on a premise that Chazal were not fully aware of science. And as science becomes, as now we have better instruments of measuring the worlds, they were not troubled with Chazal saying things that completely don't work. And we very strongly reject that opinion, very strongly. Next, what we say is, like I mentioned in the intro, that Rebbe spoke about this a lot, is that everything begashmias is mirroring its same counterpart spiritually, especially during Golus. The physical world doesn't always perfectly mirror the spiritual world. So we don't even know the physical universe, but there's a much greater spiritual universe. Chazal spoke about the spiritual universe. So Rava's statement is emes. So there is something that's 6,000 parsa, and then there's a thickness of the heaven, and then there's the sun going through the sick. All this is emes. Whether that mirrors physically or not, that's the question. And Rava held that it mirrored the physical world, and that was refuted. So Eilu ve'eilu divrei Elokim chaim. Anyway, that's the approach that we have from our Rabbeim, how to learn these chazals that are very difficult to understand.
So because of Galus, they don't match, they're not aligned?
Especially because of Galus. And again, I know it's getting late. Guys, Rosh Chodesh. Beis Din says, today is Rosh Chodesh. Now, look at your count. Look up in the heavens, and you're going to see that the new moon is not today. It was yesterday. It's not aligned. How the Torah is not aligned with Metzias. So that goes to everything we're learning, because there's a higher reality, and ultimately the Metzias will be aligned. It means when Mashiach will come and they're going to declare Rosh Chodesh, it's like the story of Yeshua. The sun stood in the skies. It should fit with halacha. In the ideal world, the physical world will